Well, John, a while ago, before the season began, you made a video about Tottenham and how close they were to finishing, breaking up the sort of duopoly of Man City and Liverpool. And I believe we're going to play a clip from that now.
Now, in order to challenge for the title, Spurs have to do one very simple thing, and that is pick up more points.
I'm John Mackenzie, and I think, they're so good at the game.
That's what you sound like. But do tell me about that, because a lot of your analysis was focused on how many points a team requires to sort of breach that top 1 and 2. It's also worth caveating with saying that you did make this before the season began, and Liverpool are rubbish, aren't they? That's the word on the street. They're crap.
Yeah, it's also worth caveating that I don't sound constipated in all of my videos. So if you haven't managed to catch my videos, then
some of them,
be aware. Yeah, I think it's really interesting looking back on that video now, because we were just assuming that Manchester City and Liverpool were just going to do what Manchester City and Liverpool do, and that hasn't been the case. I think both Manchester City and Liverpool have dropped. Certainly Liverpool have dropped more points than they did last season.
City have dropped 4 points, I believe. They're still unbeaten.
Do we know how many they dropped last season?
I'm really sorry, I don't know that. No. I can find out while you're talking.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is very much an outlier situation, so the context has changed. So it may even be the case that you don't even need to reach the height that you needed to reach in previous seasons to actually be a title challenger. And I think for me, as we started out with, the big question is going to be whether or not we see any improvement from Spurs from here on in. But I'd be interested on actually Nathan's opinion on. So you played the 3-5.
Oh, I've got an answer for you.
Okay.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. I figured that was a good opportunity, just in the middle of your discussion. Manchester City actually only had 14 points at this time last season, whereas now they have 17. So one win fewer. In fact, they'd lost a game and presumably drawn 2, as opposed to just drawing. So currently unbeaten. They're performing much better. Liverpool, of course, had 15 points at this time last season, so are not doing well at all. And Chelsea were top of the league with 16 points. Imagine. So no one last season did as well as a number of teams have done this season.
Well, ignore everything I've just said, but I am interested in Nathan's thoughts on moving to the 3-5-2, which is what you did against Leicester, right? Do you think that will be something that you see more in future, and how does that change the automatisms, the shift between the two?
Can you also describe what the difference between those two would be?
So because everything is so automated, the productive differences in possession aren't that great. I guess the main thing there is what happens to Kulusevski, right? I just spent a while talking about why when we went 3 games without Kulusevski starting, we couldn't produce much in possession. We couldn't finish off our moves. So could he play as one of the number 8s in the midfield 3? I prefer the way it covers space defensively. I think that when we play the 3-4-3, we get pushed into a 5-4-1. The wingers get really pinned back into the defensive line. And that makes it really hard for us to push out, to press, to regain our own possession and stuff like that. Whereas a 3-5-2, I think, covers that space a little nicer.
I guess you're using your wing backs for width there rather than wide players, right?
Yeah. I guess the thing is that the profile that Conte wants from his midfield 2 are a couple of burly boys who get up and down and do a bit of everything, right? Whereas the midfield 3 is much more specialised. You've got a number 6 who's this regista, and then you've got one of the back and forth players, and then a sort of a more dynamic, more creatively free, more advanced central midfielder on the opposite side. I like to think Kulusevski could play that role. I don't think he has done so far in his career, but I think that could be a fit for him. It would mean, I guess, therefore dropping one of Højbjerg and Bentancur, and that sort of feels a little hard to imagine at the moment. The 3-5-2 made sense in that particular game because of the situation in it. Although, having said that, I feel like we've probably had the midfield overrun a few times this season, and that's probably played a significant part in our discussion of us having the ball so little this season. So Spurs fans are kind of crying out for the 3-5-2. I really wanted to see more of it last season when the Conte first came in. The main question is Kulusevski.
Mm-hmm. So, do you think they can finish second? I mean, do you think they can finish first?
I don't think they can finish first because Man City exists. And
Sure.
City. I mean, we're going to talk about Erling Haaland again in a bit.
We are.
And that will help contextualise a lot of this. But
Yes.
I think there's no reason why they shouldn't be battling out for that second spot. And it's going to be a really fun end to the season, right? Because you've got to feel like Liverpool are going to... I don't know.
Rally.
Something's going to change with Liverpool, like whatever that is. But you've also got Chelsea with Graham Potter, and I think that is going to see them sort of climbing back up the table as well. Arsenal look good, and Spurs are there and thereabouts. But
Manchester United look far less hopeless than they did before.
Yeah, and they're certainly putting pressure on anyone sort of having a wobble in terms of the top four. But yeah, for me, I just don't think that the way things are at Spurs at the moment is sustainable. So something is going to have to change if they are to continue putting up that sort of points total. But I mean,
that'd be something as simple as the switch to 3-5-2.
Yeah, I mean, there's any number of things that could be done to change that. I guess Nathan and I have disagreed on this.
I was going to say, this is where you disagree. He's hopeful that things will improve. You're expecting that they won't.
Yeah, and I say that because like so a lot of the opinions that I'm developing about Spurs are based on like some of the data viz that I'm seeing. And that's not to say that I don't agree that if Spurs change, that they'll get better. Like that's just true. But I think as things are at the moment, the big question is: are Spurs just sort of breaking the model? So they simply, because they've got that front three who are just probably the most elite three in. I'm not going to say something like that, but they're very good.
PSG exists. So
yeah. Well, I was going to say in the Premier League, but like they are one of the best front threes in the world. Certainly at playing without the ball that much, in which case, there's a sense in which you don't need to have possession of the ball that much when you are developing your whole system to bait the opposition in, create space for those three to just feast. So there's a sense in which, they are an outlier. But for me, the big question is like, how big of an outlier are they going to be?
And how do you disagree with John?
Well, I think that we will be an outlier to an extent, as we've seen historically with Conte, right? But I don't think that we will keep up. Oh, you just need one final third pass from Kane to Son, and that's a goal for the rest of the season. I think that we will see a lot more of the ball as the season goes on. I think that I'm sort of getting out of my comfort zone here, but I think that there is a periodization element to speak of in terms of we're building our fitness slowly and looking for the long haul and the very long season with 2 games a week forever. And we've also sort of been coming on late in games a lot, getting really sharp around the 80th minute.
You said something interesting on the extra inch the other day, that whilst you haven't been pressing very much so far, the upside of that is that presumably you would think you might have a bit more energy come the end of the season when other teams are running out of steam.
Yeah, quite possibly. And I think an individual game is kind of a microcosm of the season in terms of fitness, in terms of us. We've been pressing more towards the end of games. We've been having more sort of athletically dynamic counterattacks towards the end of games. And those new purchases who haven't seen a lot of the pitch yet, developing, coming into the game, should give us that depth and that rotation and that fitness to see the season through.
And they'll be out of the Champions League soon enough as well, so they'll have fewer games.
If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. The Athletic is home to some of the world's best sports journalists, including David Ornstein, Daniel Taylor, Ollie Kay, Amy Lawrence and Rafa Honigstein. There are journalists dedicated to each Premier League team, so every fan gets the coverage they deserve, not just the big clubs. And you can try it for free now for 30 days. See the link in the description.